The boardroom felt like it was spinning. 23 faces stared back at me, their expressions ranging from shocked to smugly satisfied. At the head of the table, Marcus stood with one hand casually in the pocket of his Italian suit, the other resting on the leather chair I usually occupied. As I was saying, before my wife's dramatic entrance, he continued smoothly, Ascend Technologies needs fresh leadership to navigate the changing market. The board agrees unanimously that I should assume the role of CEO, effective immediately. I gripped the doorframe to steady myself. The company I'd built from nothing over 11 years, my life's work, was being stolen right in front of me. This is insane, I finally managed. I founded Ascend. I own 51% of the shares. Marcus's smile didn't reach his eyes. Actually, Eliza, you might want to check the paperwork again. As your husband and business partner, I've been authorized to act on your behalf for years. The transfer agreements were executed last week. My mind raced back to the stack of documents I'd signed while preparing for our expansion into Europe. Marcus had handled the legal side, as always. You wouldn't, I whispered, though the evidence was playing out before me. It's nothing personal, darling. It's just business. He turned to the board. Now, if my wife would excuse us, we have a company to run. Security was waiting outside. 2 guards I'd hired myself, who now refused to meet my eyes as they escorted me from the building I'd designed, past employees I'd personally recruited. Some looked away in embarrassment. Others watched with undisguised curiosity. My phone buzzed as I reached the parking garage. Unknown number, Eliza Harlow? A raspy voice asked when I answered. Yes? It's Gerald Reed, Marcus's father. He coughed violently. We need to talk. I don't have much time left. I almost declined. Gerald Reed was the last person I wanted to speak with. The man who'd raised the snake who'd just destroyed my life. But something in his voice made me pause. I know what he did, Gerald continued, and I know how to help you get everything back. Gerald Reed's mansion in the Berkshires looked exactly as I'd expected. Imposing, traditional, and impeccably maintained, much like the man himself had been before cancer ravaged his body. What I hadn't expected was to find myself living there 3 days after losing my company. The East Wing is yours, Gerald announced from his wheelchair as the housekeeper showed me to my quarters. Complete privacy. I'll stay in the West Wing with my medical staff. I still don't understand why you want me here, I said, setting down my suitcase. I'd packed light, just essentials for what Gerald had called a temporary arrangement. Because my son is a fool who doesn't deserve what he stole, Gerald replied bluntly. His once powerful frame had diminished, but his piercing blue eyes, so like Marcus's, remained sharp. And because I have 3 months to live, according to my doctors. The arrangement he proposed was bizarre. I would stay with him as his caretaker and companion while he underwent his final treatments. In exchange, he would help me reclaim Ascend Technologies. Why would you betray your own son? I asked. Gerald's laugh turned into another coughing fit. When he recovered, he wiped his mouth with a monogrammed handkerchief. Marcus betrayed himself when he chose greed over integrity. Besides, I've watched you build that company for a decade. Your vision was always clearer than his. That night, alone in my new bedroom, I called my best friend Naomi. You're living with your estranged father-in-law while plotting against your husband? She asked, incredulous. Eliza, this sounds like a psychological thriller, not a recovery plan. I have nowhere else to go, I admitted. Marcus froze our accounts. He's challenging our prenup. I can't even access my own office to gather evidence. And you trust Gerald Reed, the cutthroat investment banker who taught Marcus everything he knows about business? I glanced out the window at the moonlit gardens. No, but right now he's the only ally I have. What I didn't tell Naomi was that I'd already begun searching Gerald's home office when he was with his doctors. If Marcus had learned his manipulative tactics from anyone, it was his father. I needed leverage in case this arrangement was just another trap. The first rule of war, Gerald said. Pushing himself up slightly in his hospital bed as a nurse adjusted his IV, is to know your enemy better than they know themselves. It had been 2 weeks since I'd moved in, and Gerald's condition seemed to be deteriorating rapidly. Still, each afternoon when his pain medication kicked in, he insisted on what he called my education. I've known Marcus for 39 years, I pointed out. We were married for 12. And yet he blindsided you completely. Gerald's tone wasn't accusatory, just matter of fact. Tell me about the night you met. I sighed, tired of these exercises. Art gallery opening in Manhattan. Summer 2013. He was charming, persistent, knew everything about emerging tech markets. Wrong. Gerald interrupted, his voice suddenly stronger. That wasn't the first time he saw you. He researched you for months after you won the Bergman Innovation Prize. The gallery meeting was staged. My stomach dropped. That's not possible. Marcus identified you as an investment opportunity when your first algorithm made headlines. He cultivated your relationship because he recognized your talent could make him rich. Gerald handed me a folder from his nightstand. These are copies of his emails to me from that time. I scanned the correspondence with growing horror. Marcus had methodically planned our accidental meeting, researched my interests, orchestrated our early dates. What I'd thought was romantic serendipity had been a calculated business strategy. Why show me this now? I asked, my voice hollow. Because you're still underestimating him, Gerald replied. You think this is about the company. It's not. It's about your breakthrough in quantum encryption. Marcus knows it's worth billions to the right buyer. My head snapped up. The quantum encryption protocol was still in development, my side project, mentioned to Marcus only in passing. How could he know about that? It's not even part of Ascend's official research. Gerald smiled grimly. Because I told him. Consider it my last betrayal before switching sides. That night I couldn't sleep. I paced the East Wing, feeling trapped and manipulated once again. Near dawn, I found myself in Gerald's private library. I pulled books randomly from shelves, seeking distraction, when a small leather journal fell out from between two volumes. It was Gerald's personal diary, dating back to Marcus's childhood. I knew I should put it back, but I couldn't stop myself from reading. By morning, I understood both men far better and was terrified of what I'd gotten myself into. You never loved him, I said, placing a chess piece on the board between us. A month had passed, and Gerald had good days and bad. Today was surprisingly good. He'd even requested to move from his bed to the sunroom. Marcus? I provided for him, guided him. That's a father's duty, Gerald replied, studying the board. Knight to e5. That's not what I asked. I moved my bishop, threatening his queen. Your journal said you saw him as an investment in the Reed legacy. Those were your exact words when he was 8 years old. Gerald's eyebrows rose slightly. You've been thorough with your research. Good. And no, I didn't love him the way fathers are supposed to love their sons. I recognized his potential and shaped him accordingly. You shaped him into a sociopath, I said bluntly. I shaped him into a winner. Gerald captured my bishop. The business world doesn't reward compassion. Eliza, it rewards results. And yet here you are, dying alone except for hired medical staff and the daughter-in-law your son betrayed. The words were cruel, but I needed to understand. Gerald's smile was surprisingly genuine. Precisely. That's why I chose you. Later that evening, Gerald's primary doctor pulled me aside after his examination. The treatments are showing unusual effectiveness, Dr. Patel said quietly. His blood work is improving and the tumors have stopped growing. That's good news, isn't it? I asked, confused by her serious expression. It's unexpected, she replied carefully. Given the advanced stage of his pancreatic cancer when I began treating him 3 months ago, we should be seeing decline, not improvement. What are you suggesting? Dr. Patel hesitated. I'm not suggesting anything, Mrs. Harlow. I'm simply informing you of his condition as the resident family member. After she left, I went straight to Gerald's home office and picked the lock on his medical cabinet, a skill Naomi had taught me years ago during a particularly wild weekend in Vegas. Inside, I found neatly organized files documenting every treatment, every test result. The most recent MRI showed significant tumor reduction. The pathology report stapled to it contained a note scrawled in Gerald's handwriting. Continue the protocol. She's almost ready. My hands trembled as I realized the implications. Gerald wasn't dying, at least not as rapidly as he'd claimed. This had all been an elaborate setup, but for what purpose? I jumped as my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Storage Unit 447, Westlake Facility. Code 0917. Go now. Bring the blue external drive from G's desk. Munta Marcus? My heart raced as I located the small blue drive hidden in a false bottom drawer of Gerald's desk. Whatever game the Reed men were playing, I was done being a pawn. The storage facility was deserted at 10 p.m. I punched in the code with the blue drive clutched tightly in my hand, half expecting to find Marcus waiting inside. Instead, the metal door rolled up to reveal a climate-controlled room filled with neatly labeled file boxes, computer equipment, and a desk with a single monitor. I plugged in the drive. Encryption software prompted me for a password. I tried Marcus's usual combinations without success. Finally, on a hunch, I entered my birthday, the day Ascend Technologies had been officially founded. The screen filled with documents, offshore account numbers, shareholder agreements, and evidence of systematic fraud dating back years. Marcus had been embezzling from Ascend since the beginning, hiding millions in shell companies. But the most damning folder was labeled Quantum IP Sale and contained negotiations with a Chinese technology conglomerate to sell my encryption. Research for $1.7 billion. He always underestimated your intelligence. I spun around to find a woman standing in the doorway, middle-aged, elegantly dressed, with a posture that radiated confidence. Marilyn Reed, she said, extending her hand. Gerald's ex-wife. Marcus's mother, Marilyn, the M who had texted me. Not Marcus at all. I don't understand, I said, shaking her hand automatically. Gerald and I divorced 20 years ago, but we've remained business associates. She gestured at the monitor. We've been watching Marcus follow in Gerald's footsteps for years, becoming more ruthless, more corrupt. When he moved against you, we decided it was time to intervene. So Gerald isn't dying? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Marilyn laughed softly. Gerald has been dying whenever it suits his purposes for the past decade. The pancreatic cancer diagnosis is real enough, but it's responded well to treatment for years. He's in remission, my anger flared. So this entire arrangement, making me his caretaker, the tearful confessions, the chess games, it was all manipulation? Of course it was, Marilyn said matter-of-factly. But unlike Marcus's manipulations, ours benefit you too. These documents are your leverage to reclaim everything Marcus stole. Why would you betray your own son? Marilyn's expression hardened. Because Marcus crossed a line even Gerald wouldn't cross. He didn't just steal your company. He's selling military-grade encryption to foreign entities. That's not business. That's treason. As we drove back to the mansion, Marilyn explained the full scope of their plan. Gerald had discovered Marcus's scheme months before he made his move against me. Rather than confront him directly, they had decided to let events unfold while positioning me as their unwitting agent. Gerald always had a soft spot for you, Marilyn said. He sees in you the ethical businessman he failed to become. I'm a woman, I corrected automatically. Marilyn smiled. Exactly. Perhaps that's why you succeeded where the Reed men failed. When we arrived, Gerald was waiting in the study, standing unaided by his wheelchair. Seeing him upright, clear-eyed, and obviously not at death's door sent a fresh wave of betrayal through me. You lied to me, I said simply. Yes, he acknowledged. But now you have everything you need to destroy Marcus and reclaim your company. Tomorrow, we end this. I studied the man who had manipulated me almost as thoroughly as his son had. No, I said finally. Tomorrow I end this. My way. I spent the night crafting my own plan, one that didn't rely on either Reed's assistance. By dawn, I had sent evidence of Marcus's fraud to my lawyer with instructions to hold it in escrow. Then I called Marcus directly. Eliza, he answered, sounding genuinely surprised. To what do I owe the pleasure? We need to talk, I said. Face to face. About the quantum encryption protocol. A pause. I'm not sure what you mean. Don't insult my intelligence, Marcus. Not anymore. I know about the Chinese deal. I want 50%. Another pause, longer this time. You've been busy. I learned from the best, I replied. Your father, a single syllable loaded with understanding. How is the old man? Still dying dramatically? Meet me at the Ascend office. Tonight, 8 p.m., just you and me. And if I refuse? Then the FBI receives documentation of your negotiations with foreign military contractors. Your choice. I hung up and turned to find Gerald watching me from the doorway. He'll try to kill you, he said calmly. Once he realizes you have evidence that could send him to prison, you become his biggest liability. I'm counting on it, I replied. That afternoon, I met with Naomi at a cafe 3 towns over, far from any Reed surveillance. This is insane, she said after I explained my plan. You're walking into a trap set by a man who's already proven he'll do anything to destroy you. I'm setting my own trap, I corrected her. And I need your help. By 7 p.m., everything was in place. I stood in my former office at Ascend Technologies, looking out at the city lights. The building was nearly empty, just a few workaholics and security guards. I had dressed carefully, black pantsuit, hair pulled back, minimal jewelry. Nothing that could be grabbed in a struggle. The door opened behind me. I didn't turn around. You've lost weight, Marcus observed, closing the door softly. Living with my father must be stressful. Not as stressful as having your husband steal your life's work, I replied, finally facing him. Despite everything, my heart still clenched at the sight of him, the man I had loved for over a decade, now a stranger. Marcus shrugged, the gesture almost apologetic. You built something extraordinary, Eliza, but you never understood its true value. $1.7 billion? I asked. That's the price tag you put on my research? His eyes narrowed. You've been thorough. I had good teachers. You. Your father. Marcus approached slowly, stopping at the wet bar to pour himself a scotch. Gerald always did admire you. More than his own son, I suspect. He taught me an important lesson about the Reed men, I said. You confuse admiration with love and business with family. It's why you'll always lose in the end, Marcus laughed, a sound once so familiar and now so hollow. Look around, Eliza. I've already won. This building, your company, your research, it's all mine. Then why did you agree to meet me tonight? He sipped his drink. Curiosity, sentiment perhaps. And to make sure you understand there's nothing you can do to change things. I smiled. Actually, I've already changed everything. The FBI has been monitoring this conversation since you walked in. And right now they're executing search warrants at our home, your office, and your private servers. Marcus's face went blank, his tell when he was truly shocked. You're bluffing. Special Agent Teresa Hammond. We've been building a case for weeks, I said. Gerald and Marilyn have been surprisingly cooperative. My parents? Marcus set down his glass with a sharp click. What exactly are you accusing me of? Fraud, embezzlement, and attempting to sell classified encryption technology to foreign military interests. I stepped closer. Did you really think I'd just go away quietly? Marcus moved with unexpected speed, grabbing my throat and slamming me against the window. You think you're so clever, he hissed. You have no idea what I'm capable of. I didn't struggle. Actually, I do. That's why there are federal agents in the building. That's why this entire conversation is being recorded. His grip loosened slightly as doubt crept in. Prove it. Now, I said clearly. The office door burst open, but instead of FBI agents, Naomi entered, followed by 2 board members and the company's chief legal counsel. What is this? Marcus demanded, releasing me. Witness testimony, I replied, rubbing my neck. To attempted assault for starters. And confirmation of everything else we suspected, the chief counsel stepped forward. Mr. Harlow, in light of these revelations and your behavior tonight, the board is convening an emergency session to remove you as CEO. You can't do that, Marcus snarled. I control the majority shares. Actually, I said, you don't. Gerald still holds 10% of Ascend, which he never transferred to you. Combined with the shares still in my name and those held by board members loyal to me, we have 53%. Marcus lunged for me again, but this time security guards were waiting. As they restrained him, I stepped close. I learned from the best, I whispered. Never underestimate someone fighting for everything they've built. Gerald was waiting when I returned to the mansion near midnight. He sat in his study with a chessboard set up, looking more like a retired executive than a cancer patient. "It's done?" he asked. The board voted unanimously to reinstate me as CEO. Marcus is under investigation for securities fraud. The evidence we provided was compelling. Gerald nodded approvingly. And the quantum encryption protocol? Safe. I never stored the complete research at Ascend. The only working prototype is in my personal vault. Clever girl, he murmured. You never trusted him completely. I never trusted anyone completely, I corrected, pouring myself a drink from his private collection. Not even you, Gerald smiled. Especially not me. So what happens now? I took the seat opposite him at the chess table. Now we have a conversation about your remission, your manipulations, and why you really brought me here. Gerald studied the board, though we hadn't begun playing. Pancreatic cancer has a 5-year survival rate of about 10%. I'm going on year 4. The doctors call it remarkable. I call it borrowed time. That doesn't explain why you orchestrated this elaborate scheme. He looked up. His eyes, so like Marcus's, holding a depth I'd never seen in his son's. Because I'm dying. Eliza. Maybe not this month or next, but soon enough. And I needed to be certain about you before I made my final move. Certain about what? That you're everything I hoped you were when I first met you. Brilliant, yes. But also principled in ways my son never was. In ways I never was. I sipped my drink, the expensive scotch burning pleasantly. You could have simply asked for a character reference. Gerald laughed genuinely. Would you have believed anything I said after what Marcus did to you? Probably not, I admitted. Precisely. I needed to see you under pressure. See how you'd respond to betrayal, to manipulation. Whether you'd break or adapt. Whether you'd sacrifice your principles for revenge? I leaned forward. And did I pass your test? With flying colors. You reclaimed what was yours without compromising who you are? He moved a white pawn forward, beginning our game. Which brings us to my proposal. I'm listening. I want to transfer my remaining Ascend shares to you, giving you uncontested control. In exchange, I want you to use your quantum encryption technology for something more significant than corporate profits. I moved my own pawn. What did you have in mind? I've established a foundation focused on cybersecurity for humanitarian organizations. Groups protecting refugees, tracking human rights abuses, documenting war crimes. They're constantly under attack from state actors. Your encryption could keep them safe. I studied him, looking for the deception. That's oddly altruistic for a man who built his career on leveraged buyouts and hostile takeovers. Perhaps I'm seeking redemption in my final act, Gerald replied. Or perhaps I'm simply hedging my cosmic bets. And Marilyn? What's her role in all this? My ex-wife has her own reasons for wanting to see Marcus face consequences. We may have failed as parents, but we can at least ensure our son's worst instincts don't cause further damage. I moved another piece, considering his offer. I want something in return. Name it. The truth, I said simply. About everything. Starting with why you really divorced Marilyn 20 years ago. Gerald's eyes widened slightly. The first genuine surprise I'd seen from him. That's not what I expected you to ask. I'm done with the Reed family's secrets and lies. If we're going to work together, I need the complete picture. Gerald nodded slowly. Very well, but it's a long story, and not a pretty one. I have time, I said, settling back in my chair, and I've already seen the ugly side of your family. As dawn broke over the Berkshires, I finally understood the full tragedy of the Reed dynasty and the opportunity it presented for something better to emerge from its ashes. I never wanted children, Gerald began, refilling our glasses as morning light streamed through the study windows. Marilyn knew this when we married. She agreed, 2 ambitious people building an empire together. He paused, lost in memory. Then her sister died unexpectedly, leaving behind a 3-year-old boy. Marcus. You adopted your nephew, I said, pieces falling into place. Marcus isn't actually your biological son, Gerald nodded. Marilyn insisted we take him. I agreed, but with conditions. We would raise him as our own. No one would know he was adopted, and we would shape him into the heir my business needed. A business arrangement rather than a family. Precisely. Marilyn loved him fiercely, too emotionally in my view. I approached his upbringing methodically. The best schools, strategic extracurriculars, carefully selected friends from influential families. And it worked, I observed. Marcus became exactly what you designed him to be. Gerald's expression darkened. Too well. By the time he was in college, I recognized something troubling in him. A coldness beyond mere ambition. A willingness to hurt others to get ahead. Something he learned from you? Perhaps. Or perhaps it was always in him, and I simply gave it purpose. Gerald moved his bishop. Check. I blocked with my knight. So what happened 20 years ago? Why the divorce? Gerald fell silent for so long I thought he might refuse to answer. Finally, he spoke barely above a whisper. Marcus was 20. There was a young woman, Sarah, his girlfriend from boarding school. She became pregnant. My stomach tightened. I never knew Marcus had a child. He doesn't, Gerald said flatly. He convinced Sarah to have an abortion, promised to stay with her afterward. Then he abandoned her once it was done. She attempted suicide, survived, but barely. And Marilyn blamed you, I guessed. With good reason. I had shaped a monster who saw people as disposable. When Sarah's parents contacted us, I paid them off. Marilyn wanted Marcus to face consequences, to learn empathy. We fought bitterly. She left me, but we both stayed in Marcus's life, pulling him in different directions. She lost, I observed. Gerald nodded grimly. Until now. The full weight of their decades-long chess game with their son settled over me. So this final move against Marcus, it's Marilyn's revenge for Sarah all these years later? And my atonement, Gerald admitted. Too little, too late. I studied the man across from me, manipulative, calculating, and yet finally honest in a way Marcus had never been. Where is Sarah now? Gerald looked genuinely regretful. I don't know. The settlement included a non-disclosure agreement. She disappeared afterward. I moved my queen. Checkmate. Gerald examined the board with surprise, then smiled. Well played. I want to find her, I said decisively. Sarah? Why? Because she deserves to know what's happening with Marcus. Because she's part of this story too. And because making amends to her, real amends, not just money, should be part of whatever redemption you're seeking. Gerald studied me for a long moment. You continue to surprise me, Eliza. Good, I said, standing up. Now get some rest. Tomorrow we start putting your foundation together. And I start rebuilding my company, my way. 3 months later, Ascend Technologies had stabilized under my leadership. The board had been restructured, the Chinese deal decisively rejected, and my quantum encryption research redirected toward Gerald's humanitarian foundation, now officially named the Reed-Harlow Cybersecurity Initiative. Marcus awaited trial under house arrest, his passport confiscated, his reputation in tatters. I had visited him only once to sign our divorce papers. You won't get away with this, he'd said, a shadow of his former confidence. I still have connections. I'm sure you do, I had replied calmly. But so do I now. The difference is, mine aren't built on lies. Gerald's health had begun to genuinely deteriorate. Not dramatically as he'd pretended before, but with the subtle, inexorable decline of someone whose borrowed time was running short. He had moved into a smaller house near my new apartment, with full-time medical care. I was reviewing the foundation's first grant proposals when my assistant interrupted. There's someone here to see you, she said. She doesn't have an appointment, but she's very insistent. A Sarah Lindstrom, my heart raced. After months of discreet searching, Sarah had found us instead. She was in her late 30s, with intelligent eyes and a composed demeanor that belied the nervousness in her hands as she twisted a simple silver ring. "I received a letter," she began without preamble, "from Marilyn Reed, explaining everything about Marcus, about your company, about what happened to you." She paused. "And about what happened to me 20 years ago." I gestured for her to sit. "Marilyn should have consulted me before contacting you." "She said you were looking for me," Sarah continued. "That you wanted to make amends for what the Reed family did." Her voice took on an edge. "I'm not interested in their money or their guilt. I built a life despite them." "I understand completely," I said. "And to be clear, I'm not offering Reed family money or attempting to assuage their guilt. I'm offering a partnership." Sarah looked confused. "Partnership?" I handed her the foundation prospectus. "The Reed Harlow Cybersecurity Initiative. We're developing encryption technology to protect vulnerable populations and the organizations that serve them. I need a director with both technical background and personal integrity." "My background is in data privacy law," she said, scanning the document with growing interest. "I've spent 15 years working with nonprofits on digital security issues." "I know," I replied. "That's why you're perfect for this role." Sarah looked up sharply. "You researched me." "Thoroughly," I admitted. "But I promise this isn't manipulation. It's recognition of your expertise and your character. The Reed men may have seen people as pawns, but I see them as partners." A tentative smile formed on her face. "You're nothing like them, are you?" "I learned from them," I said. "But I choose to use those lessons differently." That evening, I brought Sarah to meet Gerald. The reunion was tense, painful, and necessary. 3 people connected by manipulation and betrayal, now cautiously building something constructive from the wreckage. As Sarah laid out her vision for the foundation, I watched Gerald listening with genuine respect. Perhaps this was as close to redemption as any of us could hope for. Not erasing past mistakes, but creating enough good to tip the cosmic scales slightly back toward balance. 1 year later, I stood at the podium at Ascend Technologies' annual shareholder meeting, concluding my presentation on our strongest fiscal year to date. Our pivot to ethical technology deployment has not only restored investor confidence, but expanded our market share by 23%, I announced to enthusiastic applause. And our partnership with the Reed Harlow Initiative has opened doors to global humanitarian contracts that align with our core values while driving sustainable growth. In the front row, Gerald sat in his wheelchair, noticeably frailer but clear-eyed and attentive. Beside him, Marilyn maintained her elegant poise, though the reconciliation with her ex-husband had softened some of her sharp edges. Sarah stood at the back of the room, arms crossed, watching the proceedings with her characteristic intensity. As the company's ethics officer and my most trusted advisor, she had transformed Ascend's corporate culture while helping me navigate the complex aftermath of Marcus's betrayal. Marcus himself remained conspicuously absent. His plea deal had kept him out of prison, but banned him from any involvement in tech companies for 10 years. Last I'd heard, he was living in a rented apartment in Phoenix, working as a restaurant manager. Sometimes justice arrives in unexpected forms. After the meeting, Gerald asked me to join him in the garden of his new home, a modest but comfortable place where he was receiving hospice care. "The doctors say it's a matter of weeks now," he said, matter-of-factly as we watched the sunset. "I've outlived their original prognosis by nearly 2 years. That seems fair. Are you afraid?" I asked. Gerald considered the question seriously. "Not of dying. I'm afraid of being forgotten. Or worse, being remembered only for my mistakes." I touched his hand gently. "The foundation will carry your name forward, and I'll make sure people know the full story. How you helped rebuild what Marcus destroyed, how you tried to make amends." "You've been kinder to me than I deserved," he acknowledged. "It wasn't kindness," I corrected him. "It was strategy. You taught me that, remember? Always take the long view." He laughed, then winced at the pain it caused. "Indeed I did. And what is your long view now, Eliza?" I gazed at the company headquarters visible in the distance, the building I had designed and lost and reclaimed. To build something that lasts. Something that can't be stolen because its true value isn't in patents or market share, but in its impact on people's lives. Gerald nodded, his eyes drifting closed. You would have been the daughter I always wanted, he murmured. No, I said gently but firmly. I would have been your equal, your partner. That's what you never understood about leadership, Gerald. The strongest companies aren't built on control and fear. They're built on collaboration and shared purpose. Later that night, as I walked home through the quiet streets, my phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Foundation just received UN partnership approval. We're going global. Dinner tomorrow to celebrate? I smiled and texted back. Absolutely. As I reached my apartment building, I paused to look up at the stars, something I'd rarely done during my years with Marcus, always too busy, too focused on the next acquisition, the next product launch. Now I made time for such moments, for the perspective they provided. A company could be stolen. A marriage could dissolve. Life could transform overnight. But what remained was the core of who I had always been. A builder, an innovator, someone who created value where none had existed before. Marcus had taught me how easily trust could be betrayed. Gerald had shown me how manipulation could be disguised as mentorship. But I had taught myself the most important lesson. That resilience isn't just about surviving betrayal. It's about reconstructing something better from the broken pieces. Tomorrow, I would continue building a company, a foundation, a legacy defined not by the Reed name but by my own vision. Marcus had stolen my company and abandoned me with his dying father. But in the end, the old man's plan had given me more than justice. It had given me clarity.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.